Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this second day of the conference. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to chair this session. Chatham House is also very pleased to be a partner, or one of the partners, with the Foreign Office on this event. My colleagues in our international security program have been working on the cybersecurity issue extensively over recent years, including putting kind of 3 reports out over the last 3 years, the last one being on cybersecurity and UK national infrastructure. And that is very much the topic of the day, protecting national infrastructure against cyber threats. Obviously, these are challenges that are pervasive, that touch the world over. And most interestingly, and in common with a lot of the other themes that we've been covering in this conference to date, this is a topic that really challenges the combination of coordination between the private sector and government in particular, given the fact that probably the bulk of cyber infrastructure is in the hands of the private sector, whether it's controlling energy and water supplies, transport networks, the financial sector, emergency service, telecoms, and as we'll also hear from our last speaker, affecting also the capacity for the media to communicate and be able to serve either as a communicator for its own ends, but also as a communicator for government as well in the case of any particular emergency moments. So this is a topic that I think is probably at the heart of the cyber conversations that are being held over these days, and I'm delighted that we have a group of speakers here who I think each in their turn will be able to tackle this topic from a very interesting perspective. What I will do is I'll introduce each of them as they head up and invite each of them to make some remarks of 7 to 8, maybe to 10 maximum minutes, so that we can have also the maximum amount of time for conversation amongst the panelists and also with you in the audience, and be able to draw in your insights. And I think also we'll be able to hopefully to get some broader questions drawn in from the audiences that are keeping up with this conference and with this event as well today online. So thank you very much for coming. Thanks for being part of this first session. What I'm going to do first is introduce Matthew Kirk, who's the Group External Affairs Director for Vodafone. The position he took up in 2009, although he's been with Vodafone since 2006. Matthew brings that important combination of both having worked in the private sector but also in government, having served for the beginning of his career with the Foreign Office. He also ran the FCO's investment in IT and telecoms for 3 years, served as ambassador to Finland, and therefore I think with the very critical role that Vodafone plays in the telecoms infrastructure, it's great to have him as the kickoff speaker. So Matthew, you're our first speaker, and I'll introduce the other speakers as we go along.
Thank you very much, Robin. Good morning. The title of this session was changed a couple of days ago, and I was rather relieved when it changed, because it had been about protecting the critical national infrastructure. And critical national infrastructure is one of those phrases which is used a great deal and not very often defined. And when you look for definitions of it, you find rather different ones or rather general ones. There's one, for example, in the US Patriot Act. It doesn't particularly tell you what you're talking about. As Robin says, it's a number of facets, a number of assets which are critical to the functioning of our society, like energy, water, food chain, health, transport, financial services, emergency services, defense forces. In fact, when you start listing them out, you start to wonder a little bit what isn't critical national infrastructure rather than what is. Interesting question, perhaps. Critical national infrastructure today defined very much by ministers in government. Be interesting to go and ask the people, the 20-year-olds in tents in front of St. Paul's, whether their view of what's critical to the functioning of society is the same as government. But narrowing the session down to the cyber threat to national infrastructure is really helpful, partly because it's an issue that I feel I can talk about with a little bit more knowledge, but partly also because it's a more containable subject. One of the things that links all of those elements of the critical national infrastructure together is that they rely on networks to make them work. And so the cyber threat to national infrastructure is the threat that comes across networks and through the systems which people are using across those networks and are delivered by them. And when you think of the protection of this national infrastructure as one of the core responsibilities of government, one of the striking things when you look at the cyber threat coming across the networks is that most of those networks are not directly controlled by government. Some are run by parastatal companies, but many, such as the one that my company runs, are run by private sector operators and sold into the other elements of the critical national infrastructure from one part of the private sector to another. So clearly, the relationship between government and the private sector in protecting the national infrastructure from cyber threats is absolutely fundamental. A quick word on the threat. I think there was a fair amount of discussion of this yesterday. I don't want to go into it in detail, but certainly what we see is threats that come apparently from governments, from organized crimes, from the hacker community, from insiders within your own business occasionally, and from the sort of gifted amateur who's just out for a bit of fun. And the purpose of such attacks is not always very clear. Sometimes you can see a denial of service attempt or the theft of data as a clear motive for the attack. But sometimes, rather as George Mallory, who died at the top of Everest in the 1920s on his third attempt, said when he was asked why he kept trying to climb Everest, his answer was because it's there. And a number of the people who attack networks and attack infrastructure through networks are clearly doing so because it's there. And some of those have a sort of malicious purpose to them. Some of them actually are trying to expose what they see as vulnerabilities in order that those vulnerabilities are closed up. Whatever the motive, there is a huge growth in these attacks happening at the moment. And the target can be the company itself, the network provider. It can be the customer, which could be a private individual, major corporation, or a government, or it could be elements of the critical national infrastructure attacked through that. Quick word on the role of government. I think others in the panel are much better placed than me to talk about the role of government, but it follows from what I've said that collaboration with the private sector is a fundamental part of what government needs to do. And the willingness to build trust-based systems which allow government and the private sector to exchange information about the threat is of fundamental importance. And this can be difficult to do. For companies, it involves disclosing information to competitors and to others, including companies' own customers in some cases, which are revealing of potential vulnerabilities in the company's ability to provide service. And for government, it's very often the most sensitive, the most secret parts of government who need to be involved. Another very important responsibility of government, which I'll come back to, is the ability to investigate and prosecute wrongdoing. And this raises a question which was quite a theme of the discussions at times yesterday, the question of digital jurisdiction, of how you make it possible to enforce the rules that operate in our society normally, including in cyberspace. In the private sector, there's obviously a particular responsibility for those who provide cyber services. Again, the same trio, the company, the customer, and the critical infrastructure that you are underpinning. And trust is going to be, is already, but I think will be an increasingly important element in the adoption, spread, and promotion of the cyber-based business promise. So I think that the ability of the private sector provider to demonstrate awareness of the importance of the service being provided and the ability to protect and prevent attacks and damage to a customer's interest will be ever more important as we go forward. But some parts of the private sector, not those, I think, who are more centrally involved in the cyberspace business, some parts of the private sector undoubtedly need to realize the extent of threat that exists at the moment. And so there's a bit of a maybe a wake-up call, maybe an education that needs to happen there. I think also there's quite an important role for the private citizen. The way that networks connect, the way that particularly mobile devices connect now, opens up all sorts of vulnerabilities in networks. And there's a certain amount of acceptance, again, this was a theme of yesterday's discussion, there needs to be a certain amount of acceptance on the part of the private citizen that governments do at times need to do things, need to direct networks to behave in certain ways for their own protection. As an example, on the 7th of July 2005 here in London, when terrorists attacked the public transport system on the way into work in the morning, the government directed the mobile network providers to reserve a certain amount of bandwidth for the emergency services. This caused significant disruption to everyone else's ability to communicate at a time of critical sort of tension and desire on the part of people, very natural desire to communicate. But the government afterwards explained why it had done what it has done, and I think that it was broadly accepted that allowing the emergency services to save as many lives as possible and allowing the law enforcement agencies to track down as quickly as they could whether there were more terrorists out there, whether there was more danger out there, was a very important function and a very natural exercise of the government's powers. I want to say finally a quick word about the international dimension, because one of the features of the title is the word national, and there is a great sense, I think particularly in the way that government approaches this question, to think of critical national infrastructure as a national thing which the nation state can do on its own. But the networks that are underpinning this national infrastructure are themselves increasingly international. And I don't think it's therefore possible to look at cybersecurity any longer in a purely national context. Many aspects of the system that we're all using, the databases that underpin it, the domain name, address registries, and so forth, are distributed. Now that in itself creates a strength, a resilience within the system, which is very important. But it also means that this purely national approach cannot on its own survive. The other international aspect is that the threat itself is clearly highly international and highly mobile. So this information sharing, this trust-based approach which I spoke about earlier, itself needs to become international as well as national. There are some steps in that direction, initiatives, for example, between the UK, Netherlands, and Italy, and some important work being done at the moment by the East-West Institute to try and help build a community of trust in which this can happen. And finally, to return to the point I said I'd return to, this question of digital jurisdiction. If we cannot find an answer to how to create the enforcement capability, the key to prevention of threat is the ability to determine where an offense has been committed and to assert jurisdiction over the perpetrator. As Robin said, I used to be a diplomat, so I ought to be able to give you an answer as to how that can be done. Fortunately for me, I'm now a businessman and I can leave that to others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Though we may not let you off the hook quite as much when it gets to the Q&As. You've offered up your government experience there. But I'd like to turn next to Erik Akerboom, who's the National Coordinator for Counterterrorism and Security in the Dutch Ministry of Security and Justice. He's also co-chair of the National Cybersecurity Council there. Long-term career in the police service, and somebody well-placed, I think, to bring a government perspective on this topic. Erik, over to you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the defending the critical infrastructure from cyber threats has moved very quickly to the top of the international policy agendas. I would like to take the opportunity to discuss a recent incident that we had in the Netherlands and the lessons that we learned from it. Earlier this year, a hacker stole digital security certificates issued by the Dutch Certificate Authority. This incident clearly illustrates the potential of cyber attacks to disrupt society. It also shows that in combating them, international and public-private cooperation is essential. And to describe this crisis, our ministers, our cabinet, have been in crisis structure for 10 days. First of all, digital information exchange has become crucial to the functioning of our society, for both businesses and government transactions, of course. It has to be reliable, and the digital certificates are crucial to reliable information exchange. They enable websites to prove their identity to browsers and to other websites, and to use digital signatures. There are around 600 certificate authorities around the world. The certificates they issue are trusted by all the major browsers, like Internet Explorer, like Firefox, like Chrome, like Safari. And in its turn, this global certificate system is based on trust. In late August 2011, a few months ago, it became known that DigiNotar, a certificate authority established in the Netherlands, had been hacked. DigiNotar, that's the name of the company, issued certificates for both government and other parties, including a lot of law firms in the Netherlands. The hack resulted in around 530 fake certificates. We have evidence that at least one of them has been used. The reliability of both the certificate authority and the certificates came under serious threat. The Dutch government revoked all trust in DigiNotar and took over the operational control of the company. Browser companies also took action by rejecting the certificates. Now, every certificate had to be replaced as soon as possible. Controlled migration, of course, was essential. There were many unknown factors, and we had some interesting questions to be answered, like how reliable was the firm issuing the new certificate, the new certificates, and were its security systems in order, and of course, where were the certificates in use? And questions like who could replace the certificates? And how long would the migration take? And finally, should the digital exchange be suspended for some time? The hacker stated publicly, he was interviewed, anonymous, he stated publicly that he also hacked Komodo, had hacked Star.com, had hacked Global Sign and other companies, which was most probably true. Because browser companies had already started taking actions to reject the certificates, we had to move very quickly. And about 60,000 certificates had been issued already. A total ban would mean every website and machine using them would either wholly or partially be offline. A Dutch newspaper talked about a potential government service blackout. At the explicit request of the Dutch government, Microsoft finally delayed deployment of a software update for 1 week, giving government more time to replace all its certificates. Finally, thanks to all efforts of many organizations, both public and private, serious problems could be prevented. But the hack illustrated quite well, I think, the potential of cyber attacks to disrupt society. Well, then about the lessons learned. This was the first real cyber crisis to occur in the Netherlands at the national level. The DigiNotar incident was a real wake-up call for the Netherlands, and it underlined the importance of measures we were already planning. The crisis was not only about security, but it was mainly about trust, public trust. In particular, it showed that global certification system has serious weaknesses. It's open to abuse. This even surprised the insiders, but we don't yet have an alternative. Dealing structurally with these weaknesses would be an extremely complex operation, calling for worldwide change of the certificate system. Another lesson we took is that we need response, of course. The internet is an open system and total watertight security is impossible to achieve. We shouldn't even be attempting it. What we should do is, what should be doing is ensuring that we can give an adequate response when needed. In the event of the security breaches, transparency is a crucial requirement when it comes to trust, because then you can take immediate action and communicate about it. Another lesson is that we need expertise to understand our own IT systems. It took some time before government and business sector discovered which certificates were in use. Having a clear overview of your own IT systems also implies, I think, that incidents will be reported, especially if they could impact on your critical processes in society. In reporting of IT systems, it's also very important that we are now looking into a compulsory yet confidential reporting of IT incidents, so that companies or government authorities under threat are informed in time and can take action in time. However, we are not keen of regulation. We want to keep the internet open and innovative. And what is more, the regulations in this field are likely to be outdated before the ink is dry. The aim in the Netherlands is for self-regulation where possible and legislation when needed. Another lesson is that we managed to cope with this incident only because we worked closely with the private sector, which owns much of the required knowledge and much of the infrastructure. Public-private cooperation is the key to our national cybersecurity strategy. Last June, when we set up the Cybersecurity Council, its members are representatives of the business community, academia and government, and include Harry van Dorenmalen, who's in the forum, and myself. The Council advises our government and the private sector in cybersecurity strategic issues, a role it fulfilled also in this DigiNotar incident. In 2012, January, we will also launch the National Cybersecurity Center. I think we will need it. At this center, public and private parties, universities and research centers will contribute, share and analyze information on cybersecurity, identify new developments, threats and trends, advise on these issues and where needed, sound the alert and act. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude. DigiNotar hack was a wake-up call for Dutch government, but also for private enterprises. The national infrastructure is not only vulnerable for a cyber attack, it can really be hit, we noticed. Though we will still have no foolproof way of preventing an attack, the incident taught us a few lessons. At least two things are clear now. First, as a single country, you can achieve very little. After all, the internet is global, is not owned. And second, government and private parties need each other. Each has his own role, responsibility and knowledge. It is important to us to keep the internet open and innovative. Conferences like this, like today, are a big help for us. And I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you very much.
Erik, thanks for those comments and for bringing your experience of a real recent crisis to bear on this conversation. I think it will help a lot in terms of the questions and bring us into issues of standards, distinctions between self-regulation and more formal regulation, etc. I think, and obviously the public-private partnerships that are needed here. Our next speaker is Harry van Dorenmalen, who is chairman of IBM Europe. Position he took up in October of last year. He's been a long-term employee of IBM, has held a number of positions in there, including as vice president of IBM's industrial sector business in EMEA, and a number of his partnerships with other key companies such as Royal Philips Electronics. He is also, in his capacity as chairman, as I can tell from his CV, the person responsible for big problems in terms of the company, for everything with corporate citizenship, environmental affairs, intellectual property standards, and I presume cybersecurity as well, Harry. If I could just make sure that our technician folks have Harry's tie microphone on, because he's, although going to be speaking from the middle here, he's going to be roving a little bit more than standing behind the stand here. So if that's all right with our IT folks, Harry, over to you. As long as he keeps an eye on the clock, we'll be okay.
Right. Good morning, everybody. Listen, this is a great conference, and I really hope you feel safe this morning. So I will use 9 minutes, as the clock is here, but I'd like to touch with you 3 points, basically. First, I'd like to share a few words on the playing field we as IBM see it. Secondly, I'd like to allude a little bit on the Cybersecurity Council in Holland and see how it works in reality, so that might be useful for you. And 3, I will conclude with the 3 points that in my view are essential in us moving forward in cybersecurity. So first, the playing field. We as IBM, we believe that we are in an interconnected world. We are in an instrumented world. That's all done. We have our devices. We know in a minute what is happening in Singapore. So that's done. So the beauty comes that we can use all our creativity to go to work on an intelligent world, smart, if you will. And huge parts of the world, they are hungry for that change. They have a desire for the change, and most of all, they need that change. Because at a certain moment, when we don't have energy anymore, when there's no water anymore, etc., we have to act. So you see a lot of proof points in the world as well. Already 7 years ago, the mayor of Stockholm, a public institution, took the initiative and he said, I want my mobility in my city fixed. And I want it to be fixed forever. He mobilized 31 partners, public, private, academic world, etc. And they fixed the issue over there. And surely they had their data issues and their cross-border items and their payment systems, but the fact of the matter, they did it. They fixed it. They found a way. And already 6 years in a row, Stockholm community is benefiting of less traffic, improved foot traffic, less carbon emission, etc. They've done it. Other example, crime in New York. Again, the mayor, he said, it's over. I'm going to do something different. He mobilized partners like IBM, like others. He put FBI files, New York police together. He equipped constables with, PDA devices, and he used all the data and the analytics, to attack crime. And not only to be reactive, but also be proactive. And also here, there were data issues, and there were security issues. But a point I want to make here, that in the world, not only in Europe, also in Asia and all over the place, we have seen examples where strong leaders, they made a change, and it made something happening. And it's always interesting, they had their to-dos as well, but they found a solution for that. So that's the movement that is going on. Challenges, we have enough. In the European environment, we have enough challenges in policy making, in data protection, in cross-border management, etc. We have them. My view is that we have less problems as before, only the problems that we have are more complex, more complicated, technically at times, and certainly global. So the only way you can fix these things is by using everybody on a global scale. That's my fundamental belief in that area. And the final thing I see as a challenge is never compromise on innovation, research and development and technology. And these are the words I did not hear yesterday. Our fundamental belief is that technology, research is the future. If you don't invest in there, you're losing parts of the future. At IBM, we keep investing each year 6 billion in research and development. We have the largest number of patents in the world. And we also give back intellectual property to the world in areas of ICT and healthcare. In security, we mobilize over 15,000 people by now who are experts in security. We have 9 security operational centers in the world, managing 4,000 clients and managing more than a few billion threats per year. Billion threats per year. So we think we have a few threats. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me take you out of the dream. We have many threats. This summer I was in Wimbledon at the tournament. I went down in the basement, and there are people who are protecting the Wimbledon site from threats. So he said, guess, how many threats do you get on a day? I said, well, maybe 5, 10, you know, one good one or whatever, you know. A few hundred. And that's only meant for disruption. It's not for financial gain, for disruption. Can you imagine these things? So, evolution, we have challenges to work, never compromise on innovation and research and development. And in the end, there's only one way, we need to fix it. And my view is, it's global cooperation, it's bringing academic world, public and private together. And that is easy on paper, because you say, work together, but we know in reality it's hard work. Because people need to start respecting each other and start talking the same language. It's a matter of definition. Researchers at IBM in the beginning, you know, they sometimes didn't have respect for salespeople at IBM because they don't know what they talk about. So you need to work on putting that on the same line. That's the playing field. Second point, the Cybersecurity Council, as Erik alluded on. In our country, you know, we went for doing it. And 5 things were important. Number 1, there was a leader, like the mayor in Stockholm, who took a decision. So the Minister of Justice said, it's enough, I want to attack cyber security well. So he took a decision. Secondly, you know, he wrote a charter, a vision paper. And was this good enough? I don't know. Maybe it was 80-20, but at least we got something going. And we gave people something to start moaning about. What, you forgot this, you forgot that, and should add it. Well, fine, go. We put a team together, like Erik said. You know, people from public, private, etc. And not what I would say, the obvious people who are supposed to be there out of their role. No, we selected people who had the skills and the knowledge and the experience to bring something to the table. That's a difference. We made a plan, and the 5th thing we've done, we focused really on the people, you know, on the stakeholders. Be open in what you're doing. Don't assume that people don't understand what is cooking. Take them along and be transparent in what you do and work on the trustworthiness, like the first speaker mentioned as well. And what we learned as well in this Cybersecurity Council, and it's running, and we are inviting countries to join us to work on this initiative, is we said we learned a few things. In the beginning, people always are focusing on this one in a reactive way. So there is an attack, let's fix the attack, it's managed. You know, there is a threat, let's manage the threat, and it's managed. Cybersecurity certificates are down, let's manage it, you know. But the fundamental thing is that we have to start getting proactive, you know. We don't know what we don't know. And here, global knowledge should come together, data should come together. We need to apply business analytics because we cannot oversee that anymore, and work on the proactiveness. And I bet you that in the world we see today, when we bring this knowledge together, you know, we know much more than we know today. You know, analyze it and use it to our benefit, if you will. So that's what we learned in the Cybersecurity Council, the international outreach, because I mean, Singapore, Denmark, Estonia, by all places, you know. I mean, they all started to work on cybersecurity. Well, share what we're doing. These councils are great, you know, but we will not fix the issues here. But hopefully you make new friends during these councils that you can work on it in future. So that was the Cybersecurity Council that we do in Holland. And as a private sector, you know, as an example, I put a lot of time myself in it to help the Dutch government with our insights, with our connections, with our global references, etc., to do something, you know, in a most positive way. To conclude, I learned over time that in this game of cybersecurity, you know, the playing field you should oversee, really get into some actual things, like step in a cybersecurity council, go into a board, do something. Don't talk about it, do something. And we learned in the end that 3 words are important. Number 1, it's about open. If you don't have an open mindset, open innovation, open collaboration, open data, open standards, you cannot play along. So the word is open. So test at yourself if you're in that profile. The second word is innovation. You know, really innovation, research. We all expect that we have computers today who can handle all this complexity. Well, trust me, many people are working today in technology roadmaps to make these computers so that they're ready when we need them. So innovation is the second word. And the final word is collaboration. You know, really meaningful collaboration. And two final words are there. Let's use the talent we have in the world. Let's listen to younger generations. Because my two young teenage daughters, they tell me something how the world works today. You know, they are an asset for me. So let's use this talent of the world. You know, and most of all, let's think about the people in the end users, citizens, patients, if you will, who are going to benefit of that one. If you do that full circle, I think we can make huge steps forward. You know. So that will be my contribution, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's a great conference here today. Hopefully you get a lot of insights, and I really hope when you fly back that you have some ideas you can apply in your own environment. And if you like the Dutch Cybersecurity Council as a country, Erik is here, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Harry, and thanks for raising, I think, an important topic. Maybe it's implicit in some of the other presentations, but the need to be proactive, this business of getting ahead of the curve, as opposed to being reactive. I think there is a sense, in a way, that we're constantly playing catch-up, and how can one be creative and think about being proactive? Maybe we can come back to this in the discussion. I'm going to turn now to Simon Riggs, who's Senior Vice President of Information Security of Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Simon strikes me as being a specialist in information security. Before joining Bank of America Merrill Lynch in 2011, he was the head of IT security at Thomson Reuters. So really, he can cut us across two different business sectors in that sense. Simon, we look forward very much to your comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. We're delighted on behalf of Bank of America Merrill Lynch to be here today. I think contributing to an essential conference. I smiled as I heard the last session. I remember what felt like not too far ago when I thought I was a member of the younger generation as well, but those days are rapidly leaving me now. Let me open some context, if you don't mind. So Bank of America Merrill Lynch is one of the largest financial institutions in the world. We have operations in 40 countries. And clearly, as a consequence of that, we depend absolutely in that global financial system on a vast network of information and communications technology. And across that network runs literally trillions of dollars of transactions every single day. So clearly the potential to disrupt those flows makes the financial services sector you know, an incredible target for all sorts of threats. And while the specific motivations for those cyber attacks may vary, many of the techniques are absolutely the same. And we see a broad range of sophistication in terms of the threats that we and other financial services organizations face. Those are from individuals who, as we've heard earlier, simply want to make a name for themselves. They want to create mischief, through to perhaps more organized groups who are clearly driven just to make money through an underground economy, and to the other end of the range, to nation states that may be motivated to steal sensitive or strategic information that clearly you'd want to remain very private. And as a consequence of all of that, we absolutely believe at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and certainly I can speak for colleagues of mine in other financial services companies, that it's our collective responsibility to, firstly, ensure the smooth and uninterrupted running of those services wherever we do business in the world. And as we heard from Vodafone, this is an international issue. It's not limited to any one country in isolation. We clearly have to secure the data and the networks that support that infrastructure. And we need to absolutely prevent unauthorized access to the data and the services we offer to our customers and our stakeholders in an effort to prevent fraud, identity leakage, data loss, or just general service disruption, which would cause all of us massive harm. So let me be very clear, as Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and like most other financial services organizations, we are laser-like focused on our cybersecurity initiatives 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are hugely responsible about what we do, and we maintain constant vigilance in monitoring and assessing the threats. And clearly those threats change by the day. I'm astounded by the rate of change of which we need to keep up with and plan ahead for. Fundamentally, our cybersecurity program is based around that triangle of people, processes and technology. But while we employ experts in these fields, we operate rigorous information security policies, we regularly train our staff, often considered the weakest link, and we constantly innovate. We also feel very proud of the number of patents that we produce and create internally, to be forthright in this area. The bottom line is that no one entity, no one organization has all that information. And this takes us to the core of today's theme, really, that it takes teamwork to bring all those pieces together to complete that picture. We absolutely recognize that the critical element of a mature cybersecurity program is an investment in partnerships and to collaborate. At Bank of America Merrill Lynch, we're bolstering our partnerships and collaboration for two key reasons. Firstly, we absolutely want to benefit from gaining the broadest possible view of the threat landscape and innovative solutions that could help us and help our partners. And secondly, we want to share information. We want to share best practice so that we can collectively get smarter and better at protecting our assets and our critical information. We absolutely treat every partnership as a golden opportunity to either improve our internal security practices and capabilities, or an opportunity to extend our expertise and insight to help others in that same agenda. I guess it's fair to sort of describe the way we reach out and work with our partners as twofold. Firstly, we work industry to industry. For anyone who works in the cybersecurity space, there is a great sense of collaboration, a sense of helpfulness and sharing between similar like-minded organizations to help one another. Clearly, after all, we face exactly the same challenges, and we should be helping one another to try and get ahead of that curve and be as professional as we can in dealing with those. But secondly, we also deal with industry to government. Bank of America Merrill Lynch places great value on our engagement and partnerships with government bodies to address vulnerabilities in the critical national infrastructure. Now, those relationships are most mature in the US today, where we are a member of a range of great forums, including the Financial Services Sector Coordinating Council, and also the FS-ISAC, an incredible body where people can share great information to help us keep on top of this stuff. But we also have hugely strong relationships internationally. Here in the UK, we have an excellent relationship with the CPNI, of which I'm sure you've heard plenty about over yesterday, and again, probably more today, and other specialist law enforcement agencies. But it's not limited to the UK. On the international stage, we also have a very promising emerging set of relationships with other organizations and government certs across the globe. And as an international player, we absolutely recognize we need to act and think globally in those relationships. But while we have come a long way as an institution, and as a sector more widely, there is clearly no room for complacency in this agenda. We have much more work to continue to do because the threats and the issues we face will continually evolve. We constantly seek new ways of building trust relationships, and we've heard lots already today about trust and information sharing partnerships with government that seek to sort of transcend the security classification problem. After all, actionable information that other people have that could be of use to us is, frankly, when not shared, just useless information. And we certainly need to find a way of continually evolve with government and law enforcement partners to find a protocol where we can share information in an appropriate fashion on a bilateral basis, but certainly in a way that allows us to act upon that information and make use of it, because without doing so, we may well not bother collecting the information in the first place. So, in summary, the more we develop structures as FS-ISAC and our relationship with CPNI here in the UK, they allow us to facilitate threat information sharing, and best practice and really effective real-time incident response. The more we do that, the better and the more secure I know that we can help our own financial institutions and the economies stand well in the future threats to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. Let me turn now to Ahmed Ashur. If I could let everyone know, he will be speaking, at least his opening presentation, in Arabic. You all have your headphones down there. English is on channel 1, Chinese on channel 2, French on number 3, Russian on 4, Spanish on 5, Arabic on 6. Ahmed is managing director of Al Jazeera Talk. He's somebody who joined Al Jazeera Media in 2004. He is a new media journalist and also new media coordinator of the Al Jazeera channel. He produces the weekly Minbar Al Jazeera, an open forum for people to voice their opinion, but also I think importantly is one of the founders of Al Jazeera Talk, which was founded in 2006, which is a news site using exclusively citizen-generated news. And I think really brings into the concept of information and news as a critical infrastructure resource, or at least as a national infrastructure resource. Thank you very much, Ahmed. We look forward to your comments.
Thank you. شكرا. السلام عليكم.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
جئتكم
I have
من
come
قلب
from the heart of Jazeera in order to submit to you our experience in this new world of technology, in this new world of the media. And I remember in 2006, when certain intelligence was available in an Arab country, and this intelligence went to a friend of mine. They took the computer. They took only the screen, but they left the computer itself, but they took my friend along with the screen. Now I'm going to talk to you about a completely different subject. I want to share this experience with you. In the Arab world, we do not use the internet in order to give expression to ourselves. No, we use it in order to have freedom and to cause change. We in Al Jazeera Talk, what is Al Jazeera Talk? Al Jazeera Talk is a combination of young, mad Arab youngsters who have voted for freedom. And yes, who have created their own media, who have changed their physical being by using the internet. So the main idea inspired of is called Al Jazeera, but it was completely distinct from Al Jazeera. Only Al Jazeera's name was used so that we can have inspiration, in other words. We wanted to imitate Al Jazeera because indeed Al Jazeera was one of the primary innovators in the media that was available in the Arab world. I learned in the school of the internet that we have to go through this belt that is imposed on us by governments, by any side, and therefore we want complete freedom. This was our call. We started in 2006. And when we started by using the internet, and also by using the cyber world, we remembered that this world is not secure, this world is dangerous, and we have to be very careful in dealing with it. I refuse absolutely this word of the cyber world. The cyber world or the virtual world. No, the virtual world has proved that it is the real world. And I still have arguments. I can talk to my Chinese colleagues, to my Italian colleagues. We can speak with all freedom, with all transparency. And so I have come to you from the center of Al Jazeera, and I'm saying to you that the age that we're going to face is the age of people and not governments. Even if the governments should flirt with us and they tell us that they have our benefit, no, it's the age of the people, of the populace. Even in the Arab world, even in the world that is pertinent to us, the governments have tried to flirt with the people. They tried to affect the internet, and then they saw that this was a free world. We saw what happened in Wall Street. We saw what happened in London. So people use the internet in order to give expression to their thoughts. So we do not encourage people to be rowdy or not to behave properly, but we want people to be able to communicate with absolutely no barriers, with no precepts. So this communication, we mustn't look at other people as though they are enemies, as though we belong to different standards. You belong to the first range, but I belong to the third. Yes, we always talk about this racism, which has been planted by some governments. So we want to get rid. We want to get rid of those barriers which have been imposed by governments on people. We want to act as people. Of course, you are all aware of what happened in Wall Street when people demonstrated. Internet also is the basic instrument for change which we have witnessed in the Arab world. It is not the only means. The Arab world, and you saw what happened in Egypt, the spring in Egypt, when the government put a blackout on the internet and any means of communication, even the mobiles. This went on for about 10 days. And we also, in the Jazeera, we used to get the pictures and we used to display those pictures on our screen. So governments have to cooperate with their people. People are intelligent. People are pure. People want to cooperate with no barriers, with no obstacles, with no racism, with no distinctions, and we have to combat that. So our world, the world of the internet, is the real world, and the false world is the government's world. So I hope that the welcome is going to be popular. People are causing change and not governments. The West, of course, has given us this wonderful present which is called the Internet. The Internet was the method and the way which was the most important and the most beneficial. But the way is not enough. We have taught the Western world how to use this, how we use the Facebook, how we use Twitter, how we use Wikipedia in order to get the information. Of course, all of this was changed in order to instill this change, in order to have this reality of a better reality for the Arab world. Also, I would like to remind you that the future, the near future, is the one of the people, and I'm reiterating this. Governments, if they want to support the internet in the Arab world, if they want to support the future of the internet, all they have to do is to leave us alone. This is the only solution, and this is the ideal solution. People know what is good for them, and they have proved that they are intelligent. They've proved that they are capable of change. And therefore, if the governments, in turn, the Western governments, if they want to support and champion internet in the Arab world, you have to champion our people with their clear spirits, with their noble spirits. Of course, we did not make any distinction between one Arab and the other, between the Arab and another nationality, or China or other countries. And therefore, from this podium, and of course, I welcome this opportunity to join with you in dealing with the cyberspace. We, Arab young people, the Arab youth, we did not have this kind of platform, the cyber platform. We are talking about a new Arab world. You have to understand it's a new generation, which is totally different from our rulers, which put this curtain between you and us. We are talking about this intelligent generation, which is talking out of rationality with no borders. This is the new Arab world, and the Arab revolutions have proved that we are one body. Now, Egypt was affected by Tunis, Yemen was affected by Tunisia, and everybody is affected. It's just like a contagion, but all of this according to new, innovative ways. So change is coming. We have to have every faith that the next generation is going to be the generation of people and not governments, and therefore this is an invitation from Jazeera Talk to all of you, in order that governments should deal with the Arab countries in a better way, support freedoms. The only thing that we need is freedom. And after revolution, there is evolution. Yes, we want to have this evolution so that we can benefit from using their system. Also, this is an invitation to all the internets, Google and Facebook, whatever, that it should hold strong to its opinion. It should not divulge information to governments. The Arab homeland, exactly as we saw in Asia, if we did not find security, if we did not find absolute freedom in using the internet, then we're going to use other systems. And it's going to be our own media, our own systems, and we are capable of doing that in the Arab world. And therefore, I remind you that what we want to reiterate is that the internet has made it obvious to us that there is only one way forward. It is freedom, the freedom that we have gained thanks to the internet. We are still appreciating this internet, and yes, there are many victims, there has been a lot of blood which has been spilled, but all of those have sacrificed their lives in order to have this change, in order to have a better world. This world which is changing so rapidly. And I would say again that very, very soon we're going to witness this change. I would like to thank you all for giving us this invitation to be here with you. Thank you very much for listening to me. And If what I said is perhaps a little bit different to the atmosphere of this conference, I would like to tell you that we have gone through this experience in Jazeera. And again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, reminding us that the virtual world is the real world. And maybe the government's world is the fake world, was the way that you were putting it there. And I thought an interesting kind of warning, well, I took it at least as a warning. You know, Google and Facebook, how they interact with governments becomes a determinant partly of how people will interact with those technologies and with those service providers in the future as well. We have a huge range of topics on the table. We've got almost exactly half an hour to be able to engage in conversation. I wanted to just throw a couple of questions, first of all, to our panel, just to pick up on one or two of the themes were there, and then we will turn to you in the audience to ask some questions as well. But I wanted to get right down to this business of how to be proactive. I mean, there's no doubt from the presentations that we've heard today, and I think as everyone in this room and outside well knows, the smart world that we're moving towards, Harry described to us, is one which will accelerate, which will give fantastic opportunities in terms of kind of medical records, transportation, crime management, smart energy, on and on, from the financial sector, etc. But as we get smarter, potentially, as we heard, we become more vulnerable. And I think trying to balance these two things out becomes critical, but will only be possible if, as noted, we can be proactive in this process. And I wanted just to get a little deeper on some of the proactive aspects. I think the comment that was made earlier, Erik, by you had an interesting point in your presentation that you said you felt that it would be important that incidents that take place, reporting them should be compulsory. I think I heard you say that. Yeah. But that you were very keen that the process as we undergo it still be one based on self-regulation. It struck me that somewhere in there is an element of attention, wanting to have certain aspects of compulsory behavior in these areas of national infrastructure and especially critical national infrastructure, but at the same time recognizing that the responses are going to have to somehow be driven by industry and driven by business. Could you just take just a couple of minutes just to detach those 2 points, the compulsory element, the self-regulatory element? Maybe from any particular example you have in the Netherlands or beyond.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think when you want to work in a public-private coalition, you need to define the common interest. And I think for a lot of the businesses, this is continuity, business continuity. And to share information from government to business, but also from business to government, is based on trust. And when you are on the way towards compulsory elements and laws, you're on the way of a conflict model, right, if you don't take care. So one of the issues was that, of course, after the incident, there was, in our Dutch parliament, there was this question also. What we should have, we needed this information at the time. This DigiNotar business was hacked. It was hacked already in June, but they did not report. So there was a very serious problem we were facing, but in the Netherlands. At the same time, if you want to find a solution, I think typical Dutch solution is that it will be compulsory, but it will be confidential. So that's the way government knows what has happened for the vital and critical infrastructure. Yeah. What happened, but at the same time we have the appointment to stay confidential about it.
So it's the sharing the information, that ultimate first point, that's the one where you really feel the compulsory element needs to be brought in. Beyond that, you're looking for a far more partnership-based model, yeah, etc. But if you don't have the information, then the ability for, obviously, for public-private partnership in this space isn't there. Matthew, or Harry, let me turn maybe to either of you first. How does this strike you, this balance between being able to share the information, the confidentiality that I think both of you raised. I know others have raised in the past issues of liability. This becomes a big issue in the US. If you admit you know something, then you know it, and you've said it, and in a way, if you haven't divulged that information before, you can put yourself up in all sorts of risks in the future. Matthew, where do you stand on this balance between the compulsory element and the ability to self-regulate, to manage this infrastructure?
Our instinct as a company is much more in the self-regulation than compulsory sphere on almost everything. But I think there is a critical sort of role of government here, which is not so much compulsion as creating a momentum around this trust and this sharing, because the sharing of information, the ability to have as close to real time as you can get, understanding not just within a sector, within the telecom sector or whatever, within the banking sector, as Steve was talking about, but also between sectors, to be understanding what's happening. That will only happen if government facilitates it. It's extraordinarily difficult to make it happen between companies on their own. And to some extent, the competition authorities wouldn't allow that to happen anyway. There is an important competitive element here too. So I think government has to define the framework within which it can happen and enable it, facilitate it, and so forth. We've heard about the Dutch initiative to do that, similar initiatives in the UK happening at the moment, similar initiatives happening in some other countries. I think that's absolutely fundamental. But I think then it needs to be done in an atmosphere where it's actually in the company's interest to disclose, because what they will get back through participation is of greater value to them than what they're actually disclosing.
Harry, did you want to come in at all, Simon?
Sure. Hope it's working. Yeah, it's an interesting phenomena. I mean, just a few remarks. I think the private sector in general needs to step up much more, as even do today, in these what I call societal issues, if you will. Because they demonstrated in their company that they know how to do that. They have global reach, they have understanding, they have talent. So, I mean, you always have two choices. So hold your horses or join, bring it in. So I think that's an appeal to the private sector to step up, be vocal, be connected, and help. That's number one. Secondly, I like to bring into the equation this element of pre-competitiveness, if you will. You know, I'm also chairman of the ICT companies in the Netherlands, if you will. So what we do, rather than all these individual companies go to a defense minister because he has an outsourcing deal, we do that together, you know. We say we all have the same questions, so why don't Mr. Defense can explain in one shot what he wants to do. So do it pre-competitive, that's the key word. And after that line, draw a line, and then everybody fights for itself, if you will. And the third thing, I mean, and that's a really essential thing, you know, if we collectively don't win in this game of globalization, cybersecurity, nobody wins. So it's also an attitude, mindset idea in my view. Yeah. So I hate people, you know, who say it can be done, but don't do it. Well, be a man, be a woman, and go into the middle and help, because it's like my Arabic friend here said. The world is changing. Younger generations are taking over. So it's leaders like us here who define the next steps. And if we are not familiar with cybersecurity and if we don't use our iPads and devices, then the issue might be in this room. So I just give you a few pictures. Don't be afraid. I'm done now, you know. But it's around these themes. But really step up. Take that over. Step up and go into the middle and play along. That's the key thing I would advise to do. Simon, I'll let you make a comment if you want on any of these points, but this last point that Harry just raised, that it's us in the room, again, many of the people watching online, but this ability to raise the level of awareness into boards, not simply at the specialist level, not just at the technical level, but for this, the risks to be fully understood, the capacity to be fully understood. What does a Bank of America Merrill Lynch do? I mean, how much awareness do you think there is, in your experience as a security professional, in boards in particular, about how essential the cyber vulnerabilities are and the reliances on these infrastructures and technologies?
So I think it's clearly growing. You know, I'm greatly heartened that within the security industry these days, the information security industry, we see a changing breed of chief information security officer coming through. Traditionally, and there's nothing wrong with this necessarily, but traditionally they've often come from an exclusive military and intelligence background. And that's fine, but what we absolutely have to understand is we need to be able to communicate in a way that's relevant to the business that we serve and work with. So, if you're going to go along to a boardroom and talk about widgets and bytes, then clearly you're not going to have much of an appetite for that conversation. I think if you go along and talk about genuine threats that impact what the business genuinely cares about in terms of bottom line or customer trust or our ability to serve particular markets in an appropriate and credible way, then you need to be able to speak in a particular fashion that resonates with that board. And increasingly we're seeing that to be the case.
Let me open it up to the floor. We've got microphones that will come to you and be able to take your questions. And when you do ask your question, if you could please let the panel know who you are, and we'll see. We've got a good 20 minutes to be able to engage in a conversation. Any takers at this stage? Yep, first question here. Got one there. Microphone coming first here. If yes, just pass it along there.
My name is Mr. Habermeyer. I'm from Austria. I'm deeply impressed about the innovation and collaboration on a worldwide scale, perhaps on the example of the Netherlands. And we wrapped up already all the knowledge on the political strategic level to this topic. But what I'm missing is a little bit a vision about who is going on, who is taking on the leadership or guidance. Because you in the Netherlands, you had the guidance. So on a worldwide scale, this is a little bit more difficult, I would say. So I would be very interested in your views about what is going on then after this conference, this London Cyber. We heard that we will meet in Hungary and in Korea, but what is happening then there? Are there working groups? Are there specialists working on legal aspects or more technical aspects? So I would be very interested in how would you define on a worldwide scale what is going on, how we are working on this. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think this idea of the international cooperation, I think you said yourself, Erik, that you can't work this purely on a national level. If you could share, and if anyone here on the panel could share the steps that have been taken internationally to build up these best practices and to take an international approach, maybe starting with you.
What I very much believe in informal structures. I have no expectation that we will create in a few months or years a complete governance structure for the international exchange of information and knowledge. But I think we do need an international platform. And on our way to that, I think it would be very wise to start with things like basic principles. Of course, we have to answer the question, where will these principles be about? Will it be on a high strategic level, or will it be on a more pragmatic and concrete level? Maybe that could also be something for our new conference, next conference. But I very much believe in informal platforms, trusted communities, core groups that bring dynamics to this issue. And I think we need it because we have already, let's say, a sense of urgency on the political level. It's growing. We have a very strong operational international cooperation from the CPNIs or the CERTs, but we don't have anything in between. And I think that gap should be filled with, well, I think informal platforms and core groups.
Yeah. I think it's a very interesting question you're asking, you know, because we're also seeking for game changing. We had this world that we have a conference, and 3 years later we had the follow-up conference. Well, if you still, or if we are still on that model, they were missing the boat. The world is going so fast that if we don't operationalize all what we learned much faster, then we're missing the boat. So a few examples. First, I mean, in America, you know, the Obama administration invited 13 private companies, go talk to me. I have a healthcare issue. I have an employment issue. Talk to me and come with concrete examples how you can help. It's done, and we are running in America with the Obama. That's an example. Second thing, innovation. The old model, according Gartner, is that people in a department have an idea, and the manager decides what is good or what is not good. So how can he do that still, he or she still do that in this world? So the new world is you need innovation gems, you need internet, crowdsourcing, and automatically you select the best ideas. And as well, you get the buy-in from many people who want to do that. So you capitalize much more on collective intelligence here. And the third thing is, all of your countries, on Monday we can pick up the phone. What did you do, everybody in the room here, with the outcome of this conference? Did you go to your government? Did you offer your help? If the answer is no by Tuesday, then we're missing something. So sorry that I want to be so direct, but something is happening in this world. And if we still fix that all in a traditional way, then we're missing the boat. We are missing the boat.
So, I mean, you've got operations in 40 countries. How are you coordinating at a practical level with multiple jurisdictions, different approaches, different governments? Are there particular channels in place today that you're able to take advantage of, or are you having to create different channels in each jurisdiction as you go along?
Thank you. So we absolutely put a lot of effort into forging those relationships on an international basis. And I have colleagues whose role it is specifically to take the leadership in that space. And I think that's really important, and we welcome all the support we get from government agencies and partners to help us through that. But, you know, I think you have to be realistic. I'm not a massive believer in saying that the agenda is set from some sort of higher organisation and passed down to us and we're told how we should follow this. And the innovation and the sort of organic growth, I think, is a key point. So from a personal perspective, you know, I believe that from our leadership that we can bring personally to the table, we should go out and seek like-minded organisations and start that journey. Interestingly, I think Rod Beckstrom is speaking later today. You know, he wrote a book around the power of leaderless organisations, and it's a very powerful piece of work that talks to, you know, in a leaderless environment, how you can grow organisations on an organic basis, and how you can become much stronger as a result. And we should take it upon ourselves to actively go out and search for people in our home areas that we can work with, and we could start to foster communities where we get better at this stuff. And over time, you'll see that gel and grow and partnership. So the formal relationships with government partners is absolutely key, but I think that has to be complemented by ourselves taking the initiative to drive that.
Matthew, do you want to make a comment on this or not?
Just very quickly, I think there are some very good examples of national best practice emerging. We've had one of them described to you today. There are others in other countries. And many of the participants in those examples of national best practice, like Bank of America Merrill Lynch, like Vodafone, like IBM, are themselves international actors in this area. And so I think we have a responsibility to spread that best practice, to help governments understand what works for us, what creates the right kind of atmosphere of trust and so forth. And I think, you know, we're all very committed to doing that, and it's a natural reflex to want to do it. I don't believe in any top-down dictated approach simply because I think it would take far too long ever to define what it was you're trying to achieve. The world is moving too quickly for that. So I think this is an organic growth, but we've got some good foundations at a national level. It needs to internationalize.
Okay, we have a question here, and then if any other hands going up, yep, maybe take, let's take 3 questions. If we've got a panel here, come to you as well, so in a minute. Let me take 3 here first. Yep.
Thanks. Dave Clementi from Chatham House. I just wanted to pick up on this theme we're talking about between kind of partnership and operating in multiple jurisdictions. My question is digging a little bit deeper beneath this public-private partnership into the incentives and some of the tensions that were touched on earlier. My question is, if I'm a small telecom in the Netherlands and the government comes to me and asks for public-private partnership, it's a bit easier than if I'm a very large multinational that operates in the Netherlands and the Dutch government comes asking for partnership. So all the private sector speakers on the panel here are from large multinationals. How do they balance this tension between commercial incentives that come from operating in multiple jurisdictions on one hand with requests from governments for partnership or perhaps even alliance if that partnership takes a slightly stronger form? How do you balance that, especially when what we're talking about here is a less regulated form of cooperation? Thanks.
He's talking to you.
Question here, yep.
Thank you. Heather Blake from Reporters Without Borders, or Reporters Sans Frontières, and we are a non-governmental organization, so I represent the NGO sector. And I'm very glad that you have somebody from Al Jazeera on the panel, and all of the comments have been very interesting. I was wondering if you could address how a balance could be struck between the NGO sector, the private sector, and then the media, on how security on the internet can be maintained, how what we heard yesterday from Jimmy Wales, community monitoring or editing can be put to good use on the internet, but also with that maintain full freedom of expression on the internet.
Okay, and I think, was there another question? Oh, sorry, there, is it? Yeah. Is there another middle? Yes, exactly. We'll do that first and we'll come over here.
Thank you. My name's Edmund Burton. I'm chairman of the UK Information Assurance Advisory Council, a not-for-profit body working with government and private sector on developing policy in this area. Having heard Ahmed's fine peroration at the end, I was trying to make a link between his thought-provoking remarks and the themes of the earlier speakers. And the thing that came to mind is that we're in the heart of an intellectual, cultural transformation. This is not new. In the Middle Ages, the arrival of the printing press caused a comparable disruption to institutions, particularly monarchies and established religions. And the intellectual freedoms that were seized by thinkers of the day, many of whom suffered and gave their lives in the cause of free speech, enabled subsequently the Reformation, probably the Renaissance, and then the Enlightenment. So where's the significance? I believe the transformation we're beginning to see is of a comparable worldwide and historic scale. However, the timescales are telescoped, and it is the concentration of those timescales that is so demanding for us. But we shouldn't lose hope. And I think the demands that it places on us, and Ahmed highlighted this, is really an issue of leadership. How does the elder generation, managing and leading complex international cross-border enterprises, share its understanding of managing complexity and uncertainty with the new generation? And how should we help the younger generation develop their leadership skills to lead in this new world in a way that in 10, 20, 50 years' time, we'll all be proud that we tackled it? Interested to hear perhaps Chairman Ahmed's views first, and then the rest of the panel's views on that.
I'll definitely pass that question on to Ahmed. I notice we've got literally only about 5 minutes left. I've got a couple of questions here, so what I'm going to do is draw a few more in, and then I think we'll be able to have a chance to run across the whole panel as we go through. First, the gentleman here in the middle. Is that okay? To keep going with microphones, is that all right? Yep. And then we're going to go to the gentleman here on the side here after that.
My name is Ahmed. I'm from Oman. I have 2 questions actually, and I'm addressing them actually to Mr. Matthew Kirk and Erik, or to Mr. Erik. The first question, that we're having a lot of joy in this particular technology, or let's say in the internet world, and that joy, of course, is bringing or hiding behind it a big fear of losing such particular technology on, let's say, a catastrophic attack, on cyber crime or whatever. And that's why we are here, to solve that particular issue. My fear is at a particular time, if we are going to lose the internet access in any country, is there any kind of, let's say, availability of any kind of mechanisms to sort the interconnections inside the country itself, like an internal DNS systems and internal systems that at least serve the inner services inside the organization itself? And I don't know if such particular thing is existing in UK, but I would like actually to have an idea about that particular part. The second thing is about the free services which they are available now in the internet, like Google, which it wasn't popular since 10 years back when we started to use like Yahoo and other search engines actually. How about if Google will disappear, for example, like Google Maps will disappear? Other services are depending on such particular service like Booking.com on mapping. Are the market, or is the market ready to have a replacement for that? Thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Question here.
Question, Thomas Ridd from King's College. The title of this session is Protecting Infrastructure, and yet we've talked about mostly about cyber data theft, possibly data exfiltration. Now, attacking actually a more complex industrial control system, or any control system really, is another matter. It requires more intelligence, more target information. Question, especially to the industry representatives here on the panel, how concerned are you about somebody actually, through a cyber attack, shutting down your services? And I'm not talking about a denial of service attack that shuts down a website for an hour. That's not serious. I mean, not really serious.
Yeah, and I think, if I may paraphrase your question, to have a kind of Stuxnet type attack where you're actually affecting services physically, yes, rather than simply access to information and then the sharing of information. I think a very important topic we haven't touched on yet. And there was one question as well that we had from Twitter from somebody here in the room, Harry, a question specifically for you about this business of moving from reactive to proactive cybersecurity. Can you give any good examples of how we are moving to a more proactive approach, specifically from IBM's experience? So we've got a number of questions here. Ahmed, I'm going to give you the last word on this. How does the older generation share information with the younger, and how can you help us lead? That might be a good thing to have, I think, towards the end. Let me get some of these more technical questions out of the way first. Who wants to tackle this last point? Because I think we haven't really addressed it. This is a panel on infrastructure. I don't know, Erik, whether you want to start on this business of the risk of shutting down of actual services. What is the resilience that's available in that area? We only have about 2 or 3 minutes to get this finished.
Well, to make a short comment, well, I think that when we consider the main threats coming towards cybersecurity, I think the main groups that may threaten us are espionage, are criminals and hackers, are not, and espionage, so states, are not terrorists yet. But at the same time, I think a lot of our process control systems are built and are protected in a time with a different threat analysis, different time. I think 5 or 10 years ago, we had a different vulnerability and a different analysis on that point. So I think, from my experience, I think there's a lot to do building up the resilience and protecting process control systems better. And it will take, I think, 5 to 10 years to improve that. So I think this is a very serious point which needs to be addressed very soon.
And yeah, 5 to 10 years, so this is a space where with the information sharing, for example, is something that would already apply. The Netherlands approach to information sharing would apply on a kind of physical type attack, not just an information attack in your today's approach, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Harry, we had the question about a proactive approach, a couple of examples of this. Do you have any comment you could make on that?
Well, I think, you know, on this one, I mean, proactiveness is all in the future, and that means that data that we have today should be analyzed, and we should think about what could happen in time. So secure trade lane, cross-border management. We know what is happening today. Containers being cross borders, with the use of sensor technology, with the use of people with DNA, fingerprints, etc. We see a lot of techniques that are possible today that we can explore in time what is going to happen. So our business analytics is used to predict what is going to happen. You use the experience of the world, you use how the demography is going to develop, and therefore we are coming with new ideas how, as an example, secure trade lane or cross-border management can be handled in time. So those are examples that we are working on at this moment with our research and development, because we need them, because this is complex stuff, difficult stuff.
Yeah. And we have this fundamental question, I don't know, Simon, whether this is for you, about what happens if the internet goes down? I mean, Google Map disappears. Are we at all prepared? Is this possible? Are we at all prepared for that kind of an outcome? Is there a resilience backup for something truly catastrophic of that sort?
So, I clearly can't talk to Google's level of resilience, nor would I suggest I could. I think to be more generic about it, we obviously have to be mindful about new institutions growing up and playing a role in society which become monopolistic in their own right. And I think we need to continue to promote a broader level playing field, that there are choices and variety that we can call upon. And I'm very mindful that in today's interconnected economy, it's not just about my organisation's strength and resilience, it's about my entire supply chain and organisational ecosystem around us. And certainly as a bank, we place a lot of emphasis in understanding those partners that we work with and helping them understand how they can be as professional and resilient as they can.
Matthew, I don't know whether it's fair to throw the question to you on this balance of commercial incentives with the request to play in national jurisdictions. I mean, this is the question that we heard here earlier on, for multinational companies getting pulled in multiple directions. This came in the plenary session yesterday as well. How are you coping with that?
I think it's a question that looks different according to what kind of company you are. If, like us, you're a telecoms operator, you can only operate with a license. A license is delivered by a national government. So you have to have a corporate structure which enables you to respond to what national jurisdictions require. We have that. Every other telecoms operator that I know of has that. And in that sense, the example of the small Dutch operator being asked to do something by the Dutch government as opposed to a large multinational presence in the Netherlands as we are, being asked to do, it doesn't look any different, because our Dutch company is a Dutch company incorporated in the Netherlands, subject to Netherlands law. There are, however, a number of other companies, and you mentioned the importance of Google and the types of services Google are providing, who do not require that kind of national presence in order to be able to offer their services. They essentially rely on our national presence to get their services through to you, and they are operating to that extent with an ability to choose jurisdictional presence in a way that we cannot. And then you've got the interests of national governments and international organizations. So it's quite a complex patchwork within which, coming back to the theme of a lot of what we've been saying, we need to build this ability to share information on a trusted basis, which will allow us to build the maximum degree of resilience into the system. I think the final comment just on the discussion we were just having about resilience is that the internet, the web, has grown in such an extraordinary organic way that it is, of its nature, hugely resilient. That's one of those very dangerous comments to make, that tomorrow morning something catastrophic will happen. But actually, when we've seen major crises, the tsunami in Southeast Asia, the tsunami in Japan, and so forth, one of the remarkable things is that the internet does sort of keep operating, the mobile networks keep operating, and the system is much more resilient than we think it is. I think, coming back to some of the questions that have been asked earlier, that it's the behavior of governments. If a government is determined to stop something happening in its country, it has huge resources that it can devote to that. And it's enormously difficult for companies, however big they are, to stand against that.
I want to make sure I give the last word to Ahmed. I don't know if you can do it in English or in Arabic. It's your call. But how does the older generation get the benefit of the younger generation's information? How are you creating that cross-generational connection in just 1 minute?
Okay. سأجيب بالعربي. I will talk in Arabic.
Yeah, just be quick, exactly.
يجب أن نعرف بداية أن
We have to know at the outset that the main thing is freedom And this is the natural instinct. So we have to have more trust in our people. Secondly, the thing that distinguishes people is the initiative and the spirit of initiative. So we can talk about the spirit. We're not talking about a definite age, even if you're 50 or 60 or 70 years old. What is important is your spirit of taking the initiative. If you want to change, is it there or not? And therefore, we should not fear the future. I believe that a lot of people fear the future, even heads of great countries. In the past, for instance, Colonel Gaddafi said, Libya is not Egypt, it's not Tunis. And Hillary Clinton said, Wall Street is not Cairo. So I believe that there is a great fear from the people, from fear about the future. We must not fear the future. All those problems have a very simple solution. Put your trust in your people. Invest in the spirit of incentive and change, and you are going to see this change in the world. What is required of the new generation? We need more freedom. We need to decide ourselves what we want to do. And also I want to answer my friend from Frontiers, from Reporters Without Frontiers. I do not believe that there is anyone who is capable of restricting freedom. Now, for instance, we have seen in Libya and in Syria, I believe that this was a shared display of the pressure that governments can press. And yet they overcame it. And all of this thanks to the spirit of innovation, of taking the initiative. So we belong to that world. And I believe that this world has become a small village. We all know each other. Everybody can communicate with each other. So what we have been transformed into is this mass of breaking barriers between people and between countries. So we are optimistic about the future. And I believe that the future is going to be far better than the present. Why are we not afraid? Because we look at the future. Why are you afraid? Because you are not looking at the future. So be optimistic when looking at the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very positive message at the end. Trusting the people, don't fear the future. Having said that, if I could just let everyone know, I've been asked to let you know that at 10:55, you will be able to experience in the Westminster Suite on the 4th floor a simulated cyber attack laid on by PwC. Making sure that we're aware of some of the key risks in cyberspace. So that's in the Westminster Suite on the 4th floor. I believe it says here on the program that it starts at 10:55. But notwithstanding that last comment, hopefully you can thank our speakers here for, I think, actually a very upbeat message, one about resilience, about being proactive, and about not fearing the future, but trusting folks. And thank you very much for your time.